I'm making this video today to talk about weight issues. It's something that quite a lot of people have talked to me about, but I've never got around to making a video about it. And I think it's a really interesting and big topic, really, because I think a lot of us have problems with weight. I had problems with being overweight my whole life. I just couldn't control it. I would either be very overweight or on a diet or putting on weight again. So there was never really a point where I was ever just stable. I was either dieting or putting on weight, dieting, putting on weight. It would go through phases. Sometimes I would just think, well, that's it. This is just the way I am. I'm meant to be like this. Some people are just meant to be fat, and I would accept that I was fat. And then I would see, usually it'd be like a photograph or something. Suddenly somebody would show you some photos of something, and you see yourself, and you get that horrible feeling, and you think, oh my God, look at me. And then that kind of shocks you back into taking control of it, and then you get on the bandwagon of control, and you hold that for a certain amount of time, and then you lose that again, and then you're putting on weight again. And it's a constant battle, just going round and round and round and round. The lowest I've managed to get down to would be a size 14, English size 14, which is like American size 10, I think. It's a bit windy here today. Hope that's not making it go shh, might be. And then I could go up to as big as a size 22, 24, and then I would stay like that until I got shocked again, and then I would do something about it again, and then I'd get down to about 14 and start feeling sort of comfortable in myself and not really hating myself as much, and then it would creep back in again with one piece of chocolate, one slice of cake, one biscuit, one fattening meal, and then before you know it, there's another one and another one, and then it turns off, and then you're just back into it again, and then before you know it, you've put it all back on, and it takes you by surprise, because it's like you go into denial that it's happening, and then all of a sudden you've worked your way back up to your biggest clothes, and you hate yourself again, and it's a big vicious circle where, because you hate yourself so much, you eat more, and the more you eat, the more you hate yourself, and you end up, I can remember many times just stood looking in the mirror in total despair at myself and just thinking, look at the state of you. You know, it's just awful when you realise that again and again. You look in the mirror and there you are again. Great big fat thing. And you hate yourself, and you just don't know what to do, and you feel like a piece of shit, and you feel you have no control, because I literally had no control over it. It would just happen. And sometimes I'd be crying and eating at the same time, because part of me would be crying because it really didn't want to, but the other part of the mind needed it so much and wanted it so much that I would be just shoveling in chocolate and crying. Stood in the kitchen, I would like virtually starve myself, because I'd be in like, I'm on a diet, I've got to lose all this weight mode, and it would get out of hand, and then I would stand in the kitchen and binge, and then at times I would try and make myself throw up. I was never very good at it though, so that never really took hold, but I can see how if you can throw up quite easily, how that would be a good solution, because it's like part of your mind takes over and you just literally can't stop shoveling it in, and then that part is satisfied, it dies down, and then the shame and the disgust at yourself comes up, and you just want to get it out of your body. So what I'm going to do is talk about, from my perspective, because it's the only perspective I have, is how this became an issue for me, and then how eventually the issue went away, because it's something that literally it can go away, and you can end up not having an issue with food anymore. I didn't think that was possible, to actually just become like a person that doesn't think about food and isn't bothered about food. I mean, it was always a struggle. I was either really determined and doing it, or I was letting it go, and but it was always an issue and in my mind. And now food is just not something that concerns me in the least. I actually find that I only really want to eat if I'm really hungry, and then I can enjoy the food. But unless I'm really hungry, I don't even think about food. I don't sit and think, oh, I wish I could eat that and that and that, and that thing playing out. What am I going to have for lunch? What am I going to have for dinner? What can I have in between? What can I have now? That's what something used to happen in my head. This part would go, what can I have? What can I have? And I'd go up to the kitchen and just eat a few things and then carry on. And then I'd completely forget that I'd even eaten them. At the end of the day, you think, well, I haven't eaten that much today. And then you start thinking, oh yeah, and that, and that, and that, and that. And I used to say, I don't eat very much. I don't understand why I'm so fat. But I was in complete denial at how much I ate. Because unfortunately, it used to feel unfortunate, you don't actually need to eat very much. The body doesn't need half as much as we think it does. And when it finds its natural balance, you'll be surprised at how little you actually need and want. It completely changes. It's like you just become a normal person that can just eat normally without this constant battle. So from the beginning for me, in my childhood, food was given as reward. Food was very much a thing that you had if you'd behaved. And anything nice, anything treatish, like cakes, biscuits, sweets and whatever, they were given if you deserved them, and only if you deserved them. And so they would be kind of hung over your head. So like, for example, if it was like a Sunday and we were going to have some cake for tea, I'd be like, ooh, we're going to have cake for tea. And then that would be kind of waved over your head all day. Behave yourself, you won't have any cake. It's like only good children get nice things. And also in my family, we were often hungry. We lived, to the outside world, everything seemed very normal, but on the inside, my mother had a drink problem, and so her drink, that's the dog making that noise, her drink came out of the housekeeping budget, and so there was never much money for food. But because her drinking was a very secret thing, it was never really discussed. It was just that the food that we were given was not very much, and quite far apart. And so most of the time, or a lot of the time as a child, we were hungry. And so I used to think about food a lot, and then anything nice was given in a rewarding fashion. And so any time that I had any money when I was a child, I would spend it on food. I'd spend it on sweets, because when I had sweets, I felt nice. Because the only other time I had sweets is when I was being praised, or if I'd been good. If you're good, you can have this. Like when I was little, I would be scared if I knew my mum was going out for the evening and we had a babysitter. I didn't like it, and we'd be a bit uncomfortable. And so my mum would buy us a bag of sweets, and then when we woke up in the morning, they would be on the end of the bed. So I'd go to sleep thinking about the sweets I was going to get in the morning if I was good. And even from like when we're tiny babies, the time that we're held in our mother's arms, the time that we're most secure and feel at ease is when we're being fed. And when your mother's busy, quite often, I think with babies, is the only time they really get picked up is when they're going to be fed. They don't get hugged as much as they need to. And so that bonding happens at that point. Love and food are associated together, and they come like as a package. If I'm being loved, I'm being given nice things. If I'm not being loved, those nice things are withheld from me. And so as we get older and then we start to have our own money, we start rewarding ourselves, because if you've got money, you can buy food and you don't have to have that empty feeling inside of you where the love should be. And so what happens is the child in you, your inner child, starts to want to constantly quash the feelings of inadequacy that it has, and the feelings of lack, and the fact that it doesn't feel loved and it feels frightened. So anytime it feels any of those things, its reaction is to reach and bring in food, because it associates the food with the love. And that is why we end up in this horrible cycle, because when we have these feelings of inadequacy inside of us, and we have that as a tool, we can't stop it, because we don't know what's happening. We just know that suddenly we're overpowered and we have to eat. And so it feels completely out of control, because it is. And the one part of the mind, which is like the logical male side of the mind, that is like, this is ridiculous, I don't want to do this. And that's the part that when you go, right, I'm going on a diet, that's it, and then you get really determined and you're really focused on it, that's the part that's taken control. But that can then also get out of hand, because then it wants more and more and more and quicker results, and then it goes stupid and it starts not eating as much and not eating at all, and then that then explodes, because the inner child's feeling more and more squashed, because it's not being recognised. And then it will break through. The barrier, you can feel it crumbling. I used to sit there and I'd be on a diet for weeks, and I'd be doing really well, and then I'd feel it start to come in, this sort of desire, this thinking about biscuits and cakes and sweets and really wanting them, and it growing louder and louder. And once it started, I knew that eventually I would cave, because it would overtake me, and it would just suddenly it would break through, and then that resolve would be broken, and then gradually over the next few weeks or days that would creep back in, and then that would become the normal again, the stuffing, thinking about food all the time, and then completely ignoring the fact that weight was going on, because to that, the inner child, the most important thing was getting the food. It didn't care what this looked like, it didn't give a shit, it didn't care if it was as big as a house, it just wanted the food. It was the other parts of the mind, like the female part, that would look at itself and feel disgusted. And when you feel like that, you don't look in the mirror anymore, you don't look in a full-length mirror, or when you do look at yourself, like when I used to put my makeup on, I would look at one eye at a time and around my face. I wouldn't look at my whole face, and I never looked at my whole body. I would avoid mirrors, windows, anything that would show myself to me. I would go, just completely in denial. And then, before you know it, you've done it again. And there you are again, huge. And you feel like crap. And then the cycle starts again, and, it goes on and on and on, round and round and round. And what I discovered was that the only way that you can actually stop that from happening is to find the inner child part of you and why it's doing what it's doing. And the reason it's doing it is because it feels unloved. And if you love that part, if you can bring that part of you that is finding comfort by stuffing it, the face, it will stop doing it, because it doesn't really want food, it wants love. It just wants you to accept it and bring it home. And that, that's easier said than done in some ways, but it is the only answer, because everything else is just battle, and you will battle and battle and battle until you find the source of what causes the problem to continually kick off, and then you gain control over it. But it isn't even that you gain control. You bring that part of you home and it stops doing it. It just stops, and you just stop thinking about food. It just stops coming into your head, because that part isn't going, oh, give me something, I need something, what can I have, love me, because that's what it's saying, love me, I need love, and then and when that's happening, you've probably had that experience where it takes over, and you're as you're eating it, there's this blissful feeling, because that part's getting its reward, it's getting the love that it wants so desperately. And so for the few minutes that you're actually consuming, that part feels great, and then it dies down, and then the shame and the disgust and the oh my god, what is the matter with me, and all that comes screaming back in, and you're living in hell. It's just a round battle of crap. And so my advice to you to try and stop that happening is to spend time sitting with why it happens to you. Where did it come from? Why is it there? And also noticing it, because the trying to stop it doesn't work, does it? You might stop it for a week, a month, a year. I stopped it for a couple of years once. I managed to stay at like a size 14, go to the gym, I was really fit, and then I let it go again. So and when you've got a handle on it, when you're in the side of your mind that has got it, you think you're never going to fall off the wagon again. You think, I've bloody sussed this time. And then it happens. And then you're back in it. So, what I would recommend you do is to sit down quietly with yourself, with a pen and paper if that's how you work, or just in your head. I'm not a writer-downer. I'm more, visual and looking and seeing. And think about it. Think about, where did this attachment come from in you? Where did this replacing love with food first kick off? And I think it happens to so many people. And I think women especially, or maybe with women we just approach it in a different way. But it's a cry. It's a cry. It's your inner child crying out for love, and it does it through food. And so you have to go back into yourself. Just sit very quietly and start thinking about it. Go back to your childhood. What are the memories associated around food, around that comfort? Like sitting around the table. Like we used to go to my gran's on a Sunday for tea, and that was one of the happiest times of my life, because my mum was always very nice to us when we were at my gran's, and my gran and granddad were lovely, and we'd have this lovely tea. I used to call it a granny mug tea, and she would just fill the table with stuff, and you could help yourself, and that was something that never happened in our house. You were given your sort of ration, really, and it was a happy, jolly time, and in that time there'd be cake and all the things that you wanted, and you could have as much of it as you liked. And so love and food. And you see, the child is lacking real physical love or real physical connection with those around it, and food is nice, it's comforting, it feels nice when you eat it, you feel good. And so we then bring that in to our daily life, and then we're treating ourselves. That's what it would be. I would be constantly treating myself to stop myself feeling bad. And the worse I felt, the more I would treat myself. So when I went into anxiety and into the fight or flight chemical thing, the other side of me would be trying to bring me out by filling me with sugar, because that would bring me up. And I might be able to escape from the horrible. It was a way of trying to just not be in that deep agony pain. Like a donut could make me not feel quite as bad, or a box of chocolates. Buy yourself a box of chocolates, and then you'd feel, nice. I mean, that for me, when I was a child, usually at Christmas, someone would give my grandmother a great big box of chocolates with some fancy picture on the front, and then they would be passed around, and you could have one. And if you were lucky, they might be passed around again, and you'd get another one. And to me, I'd look at that box and think, oh my God, I would so love a box of chocolates to myself, to be able to just eat them, just eat as many as I wanted. And so then when I was older and I had money, I would treat myself by buying myself a box of chocolates. And then I would sit and eat them and drink tea and eat crisps. I'd eat crisps in between chocolates so that I could eat more chocolate, because you'd start to feel sick. And so then if you ate more crisps or ate something salty that would take away the sickness, then you could get more chocolate up you. Just, crazy, because you're just trying to make yourself feel nice. But the only way you're going to stop that happening is to find the part within you that needs the love, needs to do that, finds comfort in food. And you will find it's probably a selection of memories and little children from your past, and you've got to let them show you, very buzzy thing around me, you've got to let them show you the pain, and you've got to accept it and take it back, and take that little kid back into you and be there for it. When it's showing you the fact that it was hungry, and that sometimes it would feel like, I used to steal biscuits sometimes because I would feel so hungry and so in need of comfort that I would steal, and then I'd have the guilt about stealing And also, there's another aspect of this, is when you've had that yourself as a child, you become a feeder. and I became a feeder of my family. I overfed my children because I was determined that they weren't ever going to feel how I felt. And so I decided to go completely the opposite way and just have a drawer full of stuff, and they could help themselves any time they wanted. And they could have anything they wanted at any point. And I thought, well, and then they won't have a weight problem because they won't have an association with food. But they did end up with weight problems because, there needs to be barriers and boundaries. If don't have 5 chocolate bars, But I didn't put them there because I didn't want them to have that horrible feeling inside of them. And so, both of them, once they left home, both my children lost weight, and they both are a normal weight now. But when they were around me, I was always wanting to comfort them, because really I wanted to comfort me. And so you try to comfort others. You comfort others, or try to comfort others, but really you're trying to comfort something in you. It's like everything that I cooked, it would be as tasty and perfect as possible. And so, like, if I made mashed potato, I'd put half a packet of butter in it and cream, because then it was so nice, and everything was like that. Everything was to the max. There was nothing held back. It was just like food, have, because it made me feel good. It made me feel good to eat it and to make it for them. So look at your behaviour, because that's what it boils down to, is what triggers it off, and then notice it. So instead of saying, right, I'm not going to do that anymore because that doesn't work, what you need to do is start to notice what happens inside of you. Notice that voice that says, I want some chocolate, and notice the other part that goes, oh, you're so greedy. Because there's always the contrast going on. There's one part that goes, give it to me, and there's one part that goes, oh my God, stop it. You're such a pig, you're so fat, blah, 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 blah. I want it. And then the battle commences, and then one or the other wins, and it's usually the one that's going, I want it, because it doesn't stop saying it wants it until it gets it, and it just ups the ante, and in the end, you give in, and then you make yourself feel like crap, and you go round and round and round and round and round. But you sort out these parts inside of you that are doing it, and it literally just stops. It just stops happening. And it's the best thing that you could wish for, because you just don't have to think about it anymore. And then, because you don't think about food all the time, when you are really hungry, which only happens like once or twice a day, you can actually eat what you want, because you know that in an hour's time you're not going to then eat a Kit Kat and a bag of crisps and excuse me. But you find that actually, when you're not being fueled by this inner child that's demanding stuff, you tend to eat healthier anyway. You tend to make healthier options, and you stop eating. You suddenly think, oh, I've had enough now, and it just kicks in and it stops. I found that I would be eating, and I may have only be quarter of the way through my meal, but the part inside that knows, because the body innately knows what it needs, and if you listen to it, it will tell you, and you let it start to guide you to what it wants. And then, quarter of the way, halfway through a meal, it'll just have had enough now, and then you just stop eating. And like a lot of us are taught when we're children that you have to eat everything on your plate, and so you end up overstuffing yourself because that was a rule that you were given, that you must eat it all. Where, of course you mustn't. You must stop eating when you feel full. So, I just think if there's anything else that... so start listening to the body, what it actually wants to eat. And notice that the different aspects of your mind want to eat different things. Because I still have this inner child in me, but it's now quite happy, but it still loves ice cream, it still loves nice things, it still loves chocolate, but it doesn't have to have it all the time. So sometimes it has it, sometimes it doesn't, but it's a treat, not something that's happening all the time, because everything's fine in moderation, but you find that your needs and your desires change, and you don't want you don't need to be filling your body with sugar and things that make you up. you find that you start to gravitate more towards fruit and vegetables and much smaller portions, and you're less interested in it. And it just finds a normal, natural balance. I mean, it all depends on what's going on in the body. Like recently I had a big shock, and since then my eating has been awful. I literally are having to make myself eat. I can easily go a day and not eat anything, and then I feel weird, and then I've been eating biscuits and just something to stop myself feeling ill. But that's how much it's changed. Where before, in the past, it would have gone completely the other way, and I would have just been stuffing myself. Stupid. I would have been expanding by the minute, basically. But with the change of mind, it actually has followed the kind of normal fight or flight pattern of, right, fight or flight's here, stop eating, and this part's not coming, going, stuff it in. It's just stop eating. It's like, you know, and yeah, it's at the moment for me, it's a bit of a struggle to actually get my body to want to eat anything at all, and which is something that I would never have envisaged happening to me, you know, in all the years of my life, for like 48 years. If you had ever told me that I'd actually find it difficult to eat, I would have been delighted. I would have thought, oh my God, that's my dream come true, that I'm not going to want to stuff myself all the time. You know, I went from when I had that realisation and I sorted out that child in me. I mean, I was doing a lot of other work at the same time on myself, but I actually literally dropped from like a size 22. When I started it, I was about 105 kilos, and over the course of like 7-8 months I was 65 kilos, and I didn't even really notice it happening, because it became so unimportant to me, that food, I didn't even notice that I wasn't eating, because it just became something that was just off my radar. Food just became something that I had to do to stay alive, rather than something I couldn't stop thinking about all the time. And the first time I was still wearing the same clothes, and then I was going away, and I thought I was about a size 16. I went to buy some jeans because I was going away, and I could fit into a size 10. I could not believe it. I'd never been a size 10. I think probably from the age of about 12 I'd never been a size 10. I stood in this changing room looking at myself thinking, oh my God. And these jeans were like fairly baggy, but I didn't go and get an 8 because I just couldn't believe that I was a 10. So yeah, it will literally just fall off of you, and you won't have to worry about it anymore. And the key to it is finding that part inside of you that does it and bringing it home. If you're watching this and you think, I would really like to do that, but I don't know that I can do it on my own, contact me, and I can help you. It's it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, to get it started, but you can, and once you've done it, it's done, because you've taken away the problem, and then normal service can resume. So yeah, it doesn't have to be the burden that it's always been. There is another way, and the other way is to clear up what causes it to happen in the first place, not try to stop that happening, because you can stop it, but it will always start up again. As soon as stress and things come in, it's back, and you're back in the cycle all over again. And you can stop the cycle by taking away the thing that causes the cycle to kick off, and for the whole thing to go round, because you know, and your body knows what it needs. Underneath this crazy thing that's just saying, there's an absolute innate knowledge of what your body needs, how much it needs. It knows when to stop, it knows when to start. Well, actually, always. Dogs are going to bark. Right, so I'm going to leave that there, and hopefully it's useful.